My name is Maria, and for as long as I can remember, I've felt out of place in my own family. From the moment I was born, it seemed like I'd already let my dad down. He had been hoping for a boy, and when the doctor announced, "It's a girl," the disappointment was written all over his face. That moment set the tone for our relationship. My older sister Olivia was the family's golden child. She was the smart, talented one who could seemingly do no wrong. My parents constantly praised her. "Did you hear? Olivia aced another math test," or "Look at Olivia's beautiful painting." Meanwhile, my accomplishments barely got a nod, and my crayon drawings often ended up in the trash without a second glance. By the time I was old enough to notice, I had already learned to fend for myself. I packed my own lunches, did my own laundry, and figured out my homework without help. It wasn't ideal, but it taught me independence and resilience. When I was 14, something happened that changed my life forever. One afternoon, I came home from school hungry. With no one around to make me a snack, I decided to try baking cookies. I found an old cookbook of Mom's, followed a recipe, and to my surprise, the cookies turned out delicious. The next day, I brought some to school, and my classmate Deborah tried one. Her face lit up as she exclaimed, "Maria, these are incredible. Did your mom make them?" I smiled, feeling a rush of pride. "Nope, I made them myself." Word spread quickly, and soon, classmates were asking me to bring more. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was good at something. People were noticing me, not Olivia, not anyone else, me. That evening, I ran home, excited to share the news with my parents. "Mom, Dad, guess what? I baked cookies, and everyone at school loved them." Mom barely looked up from her magazine. "That's nice, sweetie. Just make sure you clean the kitchen." Dad frowned. "Cookies? Maria, you should be focusing on your studies, not wasting time on this." Their dismissive reaction stung, but they couldn't take away the spark I had found. I had discovered something I was passionate about, and I wasn't going to let their indifference stop me. As the years went on, the gap between Olivia and me only grew. She graduated high school at the top of her class and got into a prestigious college. My parents celebrated as if she'd won a national award. Meanwhile, I was still in high school with average grades. But I had something Olivia didn't. I had a passion. Every weekend, I baked cakes, cookies, and pies. What started as a hobby soon turned into a small business. Neighbors began placing orders, and word spread about my baking skills. One day, Mrs. Frank from next door tasted a slice of my chocolate cake. Her eyes widened with delight as she said, "Maria, this is absolutely incredible. You have a real talent." Those words stayed with me. For the first time, someone outside my little world truly saw me. Not Olivia's sister, not just the other daughter, but Maria, a girl with a talent all her own. Brenda's eyes lit up. "No way. These are professional level good. You could sell these." Her words made my heart flutter, igniting a spark I thought had long burned out. From that day on, baking became my escape. I'd spend evenings experimenting with new recipes, filling my tiny apartment with the warm smells of sugar and butter. My coworkers loved my creations, eagerly waiting for Maria's treat days. Soon, people were asking if they could place orders for parties and events. It started small, cupcakes for a birthday, a pie for a Thanksgiving dinner, but the requests kept coming. I found myself busier than ever, balancing my full-time accounting job with baking on the side. One Friday, after delivering a massive order of cookies to a coworker, my boss called me into his office. "Maria," he said, holding one of the cookies, "I've been hearing a lot about these. You've got a serious talent here." I laughed nervously. "Thanks. It's just a hobby." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Is it though? You light up every time someone mentions your baking. I don't see that same spark when you're working on spreadsheets." I blinked, surprised. I guess I never thought about it like that. "Let me give you some advice," he said. "If you're this passionate about something, don't ignore it. Life's too short to settle for a career that doesn't fulfill you." That night, I stayed up late, running the numbers. With my accounting skills, I calculated the costs, the potential profits, and what it would take to turn my side hustle into a full-fledged business. The idea scared me, but it also excited me in a way nothing else ever had. The next weekend, I rented a booth at a local farmer's market. I spent hours baking cupcakes, cookies, and pies, pouring my heart into each treat. When the market opened, I was overwhelmed by the response. People loved my desserts, and I sold out by midday. As I counted my earnings that evening, I realized something. This could work. Over the next few months, I poured everything I had into building my dream. I created a business plan, found a small commercial kitchen to rent, and started building a loyal customer base. Social media became my best friend as I posted photos of my creations and shared my story. The day I signed the lease for my very own bakery was the proudest moment of my life. When I told my parents, their reactions were predictably mixed. Mom looked worried. "Are you sure, Maria? This is a big risk." Dad frowned. "Throwing away a stable career for cookies?" But I stood my ground. "It's not just cookies, Dad. It's my passion, my dream. And for the first time in my life, I'm choosing to bet on myself." The opening day of Maria's Sweet Escape was surreal. Friends, coworkers, neighbors, and even some strangers showed up to support me. My heart swelled with pride as I watched people enjoy the treats I had made with love. And to my surprise, Olivia was among them. She hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Maria. You're amazing." That night, as I stood in my bakery surrounded by the lingering smell of sugar and vanilla, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. I'd taken the long way around, but I'd finally found my way home. Dad still wasn't entirely convinced, but he stopped by the shop one morning and tried a slice of my signature chocolate cake. He didn't say much, just nodded and muttered, "Not bad." But the glimmer of approval in his eyes said it all. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. My passion wasn't a waste, it was my purpose. And as I locked up the bakery that night, I knew this was just the beginning. The truth finally came out at a family gathering one Sunday afternoon. Mom had insisted I come over for lunch, and I brought a box of my cupcakes as a peace offering. From a bakery I lied, placing them on the table. Olivia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. As we sat down to eat, Olivia grabbed one of the cupcakes. She took a bite and froze, her eyes widening. "Maria," she said slowly, "did you make these?" I hesitated, glancing at my parents. Mom was chatting about Olivia's latest promotion, while Dad read the paper, barely paying attention. "Yes," I admitted. Olivia grinned. "I knew it. These taste exactly like the ones from that bakery everyone's talking about, Maria's Sweet Escape." Dad looked up from his paper, frowning. "What bakery?" I felt a lump in my throat as everyone turned to look at me. "It's mine," I said quietly. "I opened it a few months ago." Silence. Then Dad's voice, sharp and disapproving. "You did what?" Mom's face mirrored a shock. "But you're an accountant. Why would you throw away your career for something so risky?" "I didn't throw anything away," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "I've built something. Something I love. I've worked hard, and the bakery is doing really well." Dad scoffed. "Baking is a hobby, Maria, not a career. What happens when it fails? What's your backup plan?" "It's not going to fail," I said firmly. "And even if it does, I'll figure it out." But I couldn't keep living a life that didn't make me happy. Mom sighed. "Maria, we just want what's best for you. Stability. Security." "You mean what you think is best for me," I shot back. "But I've spent my whole life trying to live up to your expectations, and it never made me happy. This does. For once, I'm proud of myself." The room fell silent again, the tension thick in the air. To my surprise, Olivia spoke up. "You know, Dad, not everyone's path has to look the same. Maria's doing something amazing. You should be proud of her." Dad's frown deepened, but he said nothing. Mom looked conflicted, her gaze darting between me and Olivia. Finally, Dad pushed back his chair and stood. Do what you want, Maria. Just don't come crying to us when it all falls apart. He left the room, and Mom quickly followed, throwing me a pained glance. Olivia reached over and squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think you're incredible. And I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. Her words meant more than I could express. That night, I went home feeling both hurt and relieved. For the first time, I'd stood up for myself. And while my parents' rejection stung, I knew I was on the right path. A few weeks later, Mom visited the bakery. She walked in, her eyes scanning the bustling space, the shelves filled with pastries, the smiling customers. It's beautiful, Maria, she said softly. Thanks, Mom, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She hesitated, then added, Your father's stubborn, but he'll come around. Just give him time. Her words gave me hope. As the bakery continued to grow, so did my confidence. I didn't need their approval anymore. But knowing I was living my dream made every struggle worth it. And when Dad finally came by one day, ordered a slice of cake, and said, Not bad, I knew I'd won. Not just his quiet approval, but my own. One evening, during a family dinner, Mom announced that she wanted to throw Olivia a party to celebrate her promotion. It's such a big milestone, she said, her voice brimming with pride. We'll invite all her friends, colleagues, and of course the neighbors. Sounds wonderful, I said, sipping my water. Then Mom turned to me. Maria, maybe you could help by baking a cake? As a favor. A favor. It took every ounce of restraint not to react. I didn't mind helping, but the way she dismissed my craft as a casual hobby stung. I'll take care of the cake, I said, forcing a smile. The night of Olivia's party, I showed up with a towering, intricately decorated cake. It was a showstopper, layers of velvet sponge, edible gold details, and hand-painted flowers. As I placed the cake on the table, the guests gathered around, snapping photos and murmuring in awe. Who made this masterpiece? One of Olivia's colleagues asked. Mom, without missing a beat, said, Oh, Maria whipped it up. She's always been good in the kitchen. I froze, my stomach tightening. Whipped it up? As though this cake, which had taken me hours of work, was a casual afterthought. Before I could respond, Olivia stepped in. Maria runs a bakery, she said, her voice unexpectedly firm. One of the best in the city. She didn't just whip this up, Mom. This cake is a reflection of her talent and hard work. I blinked, taken aback. Olivia had never acknowledged my success so openly before. Her colleagues' eyes widened. Wait, Maria's sweet escape is yours? I order from there all the time. Your cookies are incredible. As the room buzzed with compliments about my bakery, Mom's expression shifted from surprise to something resembling pride. By the end of the night, Olivia pulled me aside. She said, her tone softer than usual, I don't say it enough, but I'm proud of you. You've built something amazing. Thanks, Olivia, I said, my voice catching. That means a lot. From that night on, things began to change. Mom started telling her friends about my bakery, often bragging about the desserts she always knew I'd be good at making. Dad, while not openly apologetic, began asking about my business during family dinners. One day, he even came to the bakery. Watching him sit at a corner table, sampling a slice of my signature chocolate cake, was surreal. This is good, he said gruffly. Then, after a pause, he added, I was wrong about your baking. It's not just cookies. You've built something real. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. As for Olivia, she became one of my biggest supporters. She started recommending my bakery to her colleagues, and whenever we were at family gatherings, she made a point of highlighting my achievements. I had spent years trying to prove my worth to my family, but now I realized I didn't need their validation. My success, my happiness, and the joy I brought to others were more than enough. And as I looked around my bustling bakery, the shelves lined with treats and the tables filled with smiling customers, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the odd one out anymore. I was exactly where I was meant to be. On the day of the delivery, I decided to bring the cake myself. Emma offered to go in my place. But I shook my head. This is something I need to do. I packed the cake carefully and drove to my parents' house, the address I had avoided for so long. As I pulled into the driveway, memories came flooding back, some good, some painful. The door opened, and Mom stepped out, her expression a mix of confusion and surprise. "Maria," she said, walking toward me. "What are you doing here?" I smiled nervously, opening the back of the van to reveal the cake. "I saw your order come through the bakery, and I wanted to deliver it myself." Her eyes widened as she took in the intricate details on the cake, the delicate sugar flowers, the shimmering edible gold. "You made this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said. "This is my bakery's work. It's my work." For a moment, she said nothing. Then Dad appeared at the door, his gaze moving between me and the cake. "What's going on?" he asked, frowning. "Maria made this," Mom said, her voice shaking. Dad came closer, his eyes narrowing as he examined the cake. Finally, he crossed his arms and said, "Well, let's see if it tastes as good as it looks." I carried the cake inside, my hands trembling. They invited me to stay, which felt surreal after years of estrangement. After everyone sang, "Happy Birthday," Dad cut into the cake. He took a bite, and for a moment, his expression was unreadable. Then he nodded. "This," he said, "is the best cake I've ever had." I laughed, relief flooding through me. High praise from someone who didn't believe in my baking. He looked down at his plate, then back at me. "I was wrong, Maria. About everything. About you. You've done something incredible. And I'm proud of you." Mom reached out, taking my hand. "We both are," she said. "I'm sorry it took us so long to see it." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "That means more than you know." For the rest of the evening, we talked and laughed like we hadn't in years. I told them about the bakery, the hard work it took to build it, and the joy it brought me. And as I looked around the table, and my parents sharing slices of the cake I had poured my heart into, I realized something. I hadn't just built a business. I had built a bridge back to my family. From that day forward, Sweet Dreams Bakery wasn't just a symbol of my success. It was a reminder that sometimes, even the most strained relationships can be mended with patience, love, and a little bit of sugar. The room fell silent, the weight of my parents' words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. My hands trembled as I stared at the ruined cake on the floor, a heartbreaking symbol of everything I had worked for and everything they refused to see. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then Aunt Anna's voice broke through the silence. "Are you serious?" she said, her tone sharp. She stepped forward, glaring at my parents. "Maria built a business with her own hands. She's talented, hardworking, and successful. And this is how you treat her?" Other murmurs began to ripple through the room. "Her cakes are incredible," Uncle Frank chimed in. "I ordered one for my anniversary last year. It was the best dessert we've ever had." Even Olivia, who had stayed silent so far, finally spoke up. "Mom, Dad, you're being unfair. Maria's done something amazing, and you're too stubborn to admit it." My father's face turned red, but he stayed silent. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but Aunt Anna cut her off. "Enough." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Maria, your work speaks for itself. You don't need their approval to know your worth." Her words gave me the strength I needed. I straightened my back, my voice steady as I finally spoke. "You're right, Aunt Anna. I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself to parents who will never see me for who I am. But I know my worth now. I've built something I'm proud of, something that brings joy to people." I glanced at my parents, who were glaring at me. If you can't respect that, then maybe it's better this way. With that, I turned to leave, but Olivia stopped me. "Wait," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm coming with you." I blinked in surprise. "What?" She sighed, her confident facade crumbling. "I've spent my entire life trying to live up to their impossible standards too. But you're brave, Maria. You followed your passion and I admire that." I'm tired of pretending to be perfect just to make them happy. Tears welled in my eyes, but I smiled. Thank you, Olivia. As we walked out together, the room buzzed with whispers. Aunt Anna followed us to the door, giving me a tight hug. You're going to be just fine, sweetheart. Don't let anyone dim your light. When I got home that night, I posted a photo of the ruined cake with a caption that told the truth about the incident, but also about my journey, my struggles, and my triumphs. The support poured in, with customers, friends, and strangers alike sharing their admiration for my resilience. That night, as I sat in my bakery surrounded by the comforting smell of vanilla and chocolate, I realized something important. Family isn't just the people you're born to. It's the people who stand by you, who celebrate your success, and who see your worth, even when others refuse to. My parents may have disowned me, but I wasn't alone. I had my business, my friends, and now even my sister. Most importantly, I had myself, and that was more than enough. The bakery became my sanctuary, a place where I poured all my pain, anger, and determination into every cake, cookie, and pastry. Each creation felt like a small act of rebellion, a way of proving to myself and the world that I was more than their rejection. One day, as I was piping intricate designs onto a wedding cake, Emma came into the kitchen with her phone in hand. "Boss," she said hesitantly, "you need to see this." I wiped my hands on my apron and took the phone. It was a news article, and my parents' names were in the headline. Local family faces financial trouble amid investment scandal. My stomach turned as I read the details. Dad's business had made a series of bad investments, and now they were in serious debt. Their house, the house I'd been kicked out of, was at risk of foreclosure. I stared at the screen, a mix of emotions churning inside me. Anger, pity, and a lingering sense of betrayal fought for dominance. But then Emma said something that stopped me cold. "Do you think they'll come to you for help?" I shook my head. No, they'd never stoop that low. They'd rather lose everything than admit they were wrong about me. Emma hesitated, then said, "If they do, what would you do?" I didn't have an answer. A few weeks later, I got my answer when Olivia showed up at the bakery. I was surprised to see her. It had been radio silence from my entire family since the party. "Maria," she said, her voice hesitant, "can we talk?" I crossed my arms, unsure how to feel. "What do you want, Olivia?" She shifted awkwardly, looking at the display case instead of me. "Mom and Dad, they're in trouble. Dad's business is failing, and they might lose the house." "I saw the article," I said flatly. Olivia's eyes darted to mine. "They need help. Financial help." I laughed, the sound bitter. "Let me guess, they sent you to ask me for money because they can't bear to do it themselves?" "They don't know I'm here," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. I felt bad about what happened at the party. I should have spoken up. I leaned on the counter, my voice sharp. "You should have, but you didn't. You stood there and let them humiliate me. Why should I help now?" She looked at the floor, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're better than them." The words hit me like a punch. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the checkbook on my desk. I could help them. I could save the house. But why should I? They had disowned me, humiliated me, and dismissed everything I had worked for. I thought about the bakery, how far I'd come without their support. I thought about Olivia's words. In the end, I made my decision. The next morning, I walked into my parents' house unannounced. They looked up in shock, clearly not expecting to see me. "Maria," Mom started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not here to talk," I said, placing an envelope on the table. "There's enough in there to save the house and cover the debts. But this is the last thing you'll ever get from me." They stared at the envelope in stunned silence. "You called me ordinary," I continued, my voice steady. "You disowned me, humiliated me in front of everyone. But despite all of that, I built a life for myself. A good life. I didn't need your approval then. And I don't need it now." I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "I hope you find a way to appreciate what you have left, because I won't be part of it anymore." And with that, I walked away for the last time. Months passed, and I never heard from them again. But I didn't need to. My life was finally my own. The bakery flourished, gaining recognition far beyond what I had ever imagined. Customers came from other cities just to taste the desserts that had become a symbol of resilience and passion. One day, as I stood in my shop surrounded by happy customers, Emma came up to me, holding a letter. "It's from Olivia," she said. I opened it hesitantly. Inside was a simple note. "Maria, thank you for everything you did for Mom and Dad. They'll never admit it, but you saved them. You were always the strongest of us. I'm proud to call you my sister. Love, Olivia." I smiled, tucking the note into my pocket. Maybe I had lost one family, but I had gained something better: freedom, success, and the knowledge that I had never needed their approval to begin with. Sometimes, the family you choose is the one you build for yourself. The call from my parents was the last piece of closure I didn't realize I needed. For years, I had carried the burden of their rejection, wondering if I'd ever been enough for them. That call was proof. I had always been enough, they just couldn't see it. The next day, I shared the story with Tyler over breakfast. He listened intently, his hand on mine. When I finished, he smiled and said, "You've built something incredible without them. You've moved on. Let this be the final chapter." And it was. Life moved forward with the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The bakery's expansion continued, and the cookbook I published became a bestseller. My small team grew into a family, each of them sharing in the success we had built together. Tyler and I traveled, explored new cuisines, and even started dreaming about opening a cafe abroad. One evening, as we strolled through the bustling streets of Paris, Tyler turned to me and said, "You know, if there's one thing your story proves, it's that the family you create is what truly matters." I smiled, leaning into him. He was right. My life was full of love, success, and the joy of doing what I loved every day. The scars my parents had left behind no longer ached. They were reminders of the strength it took to build my own happiness. Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop to check the bakery's social media. Messages poured in from customers sharing photos of their celebrations, each one made sweeter by the creations we had baked. I responded to a few, gratitude swelling in my chest. One message stood out. "Maria, your story and your cakes have inspired me to chase my dream of starting my own business. Thank you for showing that passion and perseverance can lead to incredible things." Tears pricked my eyes as I read those words. My journey hadn't just changed my life, it was helping others too. As I closed my laptop and turned off the light, I realized something profound. My parents had tried to define my worth by their narrow expectations, but I had broken free. I wasn't just an ordinary cook. I was Maria Carter, a woman who turned rejection into resilience, and passion into purpose. And that was more than enough. Rebuilding my relationship with Olivia felt like mending a bridge I hadn't realized I missed. Slowly but surely, we became close in a way we'd never been before. For the first time, we weren't rivals or opposites. We were simply sisters, cheering each other on. One day, as we were sipping coffee at my bakery, Olivia brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice hesitant. "What if we tried to reach out to Mom and Dad? Not for their approval, but for closure." Her words caught me off guard. After everything that had happened, I had written them off, convinced I didn't need them anymore. But Olivia's face was full of hope, and I could see she wasn't suggesting it lightly. "Why now?" I asked cautiously. She took a deep breath. "Because I've realized how much damage they caused for both of us. And maybe we can break the cycle. Even if they don't change, we'll know we tried." It took a few days, but I finally agreed. Together, we decided to invite them to the bakery for a quiet meeting. When the day came, my nerves were a mess. I kept busy arranging pastries and fussing with displays, trying to avoid thinking about what might happen. Olivia arrived first, offering a reassuring smile and a hug. Then, at precisely 2 p.m., Mom and Dad walked through the door. They looked older than I remembered. Mom's hair streaked with gray. Dad's, once confident, stride slower. Their expressions were unreadable as they took in the sight of the bakery. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside me. We sat at a corner table, an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Mom, Dad, we invited you here because we need to talk. About the past. About everything." Dad's jaw tightened, but Mom nodded slightly.
"Go on," she said.
For the next hour, Olivia and I shared our truths. We talked about the pressure they had put on us, how it had driven a wedge between us for so long. I told them about the pain of being overlooked, dismissed, and ultimately disowned. To my surprise, Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Maria," she said, her voice trembling, I didn't realize how much we hurt you. I thought we were doing what was best for you both. But now I see we were wrong." Dad remained silent for a long time, staring at his hands. Finally, he looked up at me. "I've been stubborn," he admitted, his voice low. "Too proud to admit when I was wrong. I thought pushing you both was the right thing, but I see now I pushed you away instead." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. As the conversation continued, we began to rebuild, piece by fragile piece. I didn't expect everything to be fixed in one afternoon, but the fact that they were willing to listen and admit their mistakes meant more than I could express. When they left, Mom hugged me tightly, whispering, "You've built something beautiful, Maria. I'm proud of you." Dad didn't say much, but as he shook my hand, I saw something in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or respect. It was enough for now. As Olivia and I watched them walk away, she turned to me with a small smile. "It's a start," she said. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. "It is. And maybe that's enough." That evening, I closed the bakery with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full of growth, reconciliation, and hope for the future. And for the first time, I truly believed that the best was yet to come. As the years passed, Olivia and I grew closer than ever, becoming each other's biggest cheerleaders. Despite everything, we had built lives filled with passion, purpose, and joy, lives we had chosen for ourselves. Our parents' disapproval, though hurtful, no longer loomed over us like it once had. They were trapped in their own expectations, but Olivia and I had broken free. We knew their views didn't define us. One afternoon, while sipping coffee at the bakery during our weekly meetup, Olivia set her sketchpad down and looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Maria," she said, "I've been thinking, what if we collaborated on something? My designs and your desserts, it could be amazing." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Like what?" "A bakery redesign." "Not just a redesign," Olivia said, her eyes lighting up. "A whole new concept. A space that's part bakery, part cafe, and part event venue. Imagine weddings, parties, or even art shows, all with your treats and my aesthetic." The idea sparked something in me. It was ambitious, but it felt right. "Let's do it," I said with a grin. Over the next year, we worked tirelessly, combining our talents to create something truly unique. The space, which we named Sweet Spaces, became a hub for celebrations, creativity, and community. Opening day was packed. Friends, loyal customers, and new faces filled the room, admiring Olivia's stunning decor and savoring my pastries. As we stood together, taking it all in, Olivia leaned over and whispered, "We really did turn out pretty great, didn't we?" I laughed, squeezing her hand. "We sure did." Sweet Spaces became a huge success, and as we continued to grow, so did our bond. Through the struggles, the losses, and the triumphs, we had proven something important to ourselves and the world. We weren't just living our dreams. We were thriving. And no matter what our parents thought, we knew one thing for certain. We had chosen happiness, and we had won.